Welcome back into the NW Sportscast. The Seahawks fire Ryan Grubb. That was the big talking point right outside of a 10-7 season. So, Levi, that leads to the question, who is the next guy? Who is the guy that's going to fill in for Ryan Grubb and lead the Seahawks to the promised land? You got anyone in mind? Because the Super Bowl is coming around sooner rather than later. And then after that, it's free bidding.
Well, what we're hearing, Drew, is there's a couple of candidates that have emerged. Uh, I think they both would be a good choice. We've got Clint Kubiak of the Saints, offensive coordinator for the Saints, used to coach for the Vikings, Broncos, and he is the son of Gary Kubiak, legendary head coach, or Hank Fraley, maybe the more intriguing option, the offensive line coach for the Detroit Lions, who, as we've
Yeah.
seen, I mean, obviously last night didn't go the way anyone thought, but the Lions, they bullied people on the O line. They bullied people in the run game. So I think both of those guys would be good hires. Definitely kind of a difference, though. Kubiak, obviously, we saw the Saints offense at full health. They were a top three offense in the league, right? When Derek Carr was slinging it downfield, passing game, Chris Olave,
Yeah.
Rashid Shaheed, a lot of trick plays in there with Taysom Hill. So that was kind of what Clint Kubiak's bread and butter was the passing game, a downfield passing game. And then on the other hand, Hank Fraley, a guy who is a pound the run type of a coach, a guy who is going to prioritize building the line. He's going to prioritize winning the line of scrimmage, and he's going to prioritize running the football. So very different styles, I think. What do you think, though? Do you have a preferred option?
Yeah, out of those two, I would prefer Fraley, and the main reason behind that is because of what Mike McDonald stands for. And what Mike McDonald stands for isn't this high flying, pass the ball offense. That's what Ryan Grubb wanted to do. And
Yeah.
clearly, the division between Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb was great enough where the Seahawks felt the need to fire Grubb. Not saying that, that'd be the same, but with Fraley, here's the thing. This is an offensive line coach. So what do you think
Right.
his main objective is going to be? It's tough, it's physical. You've seen what they've done over there in Detroit. Yes, Jared Goff throws the ball. Yes, Amon-Ra is a huge piece to the game. But really when you watch them, it's a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs, it's a lot of Montgomery running the ball 30 times a game. And I think the balance between run and pass over there in Detroit, obviously you don't have the mind of Ben Johnson, but I love what Fredo is doing. Levi, another guy that I think we would be remiss to not talk about, someone that Sports Illustrated just posted about 40 minutes ago, kind of this late surge. Um, it's Brian Leftwich. So what do you think of him? He's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. Definitely a guy that doesn't necessarily fit the mold that Mike McDonald is looking for, but he has a team he's a guy that's starting to emerge into those top three candidates, with the other two guys. All three definitely different. All three I think could be good options, but right now I don't know. I think I would go with Fraley and then Byron Leftwich maybe in second place.
Yeah, Leftwich is also interesting. I mean, he definitely ran a balanced offense, and of course, he was the coordinator of the year when they won the Super Bowl. Um, so that could be a decent option. Got to work with Tom Brady. He did not work with Baker Mayfield though, so he got fired the year that Tom retired, and so he's not the guy responsible for the Baker Mayfield resurgency. Which by the way, if he was, I'd be all in. But
Yeah.
no, he was not. So that's interesting. He hasn't coached for a couple seasons. But I remember after they won the Super Bowl, he was getting head coach interviews, and I think he was actually a finalist for a couple of jobs. So that's interesting that he could be a candidate as well. I think I would still maybe opt for Fraley, and I don't know. The thing about these other guys like Clint Kubiak, we've
The
seen what
thing,
the Saints offense was, and it
yeah, I was
was
about to
good.
say, what did
It
he
was
add
good.
to Saints offense this year? That started hot and really slowed down.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really fault him for Derek Carr getting hurt. I mean, Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner were just terrible.
Yes,
But at
but
the
Levi,
same
we can't
time,
say that Derek Carr wasn't starting to underproduce
right.
towards even
Oh,
before his
no,
injury.
he was. And what I noticed from watching the Saints in a couple of their games was their offense was very much it was run, run, deep ball, run, run, deep ball. And that kind of reminds me of kind of the Russell Wilson style. But
For
he,
sure.
he was having Derek Carr throw the ball downfield, I thought, way too much. And I would worry he would do the same with Geno, and I don't think Geno can handle that. So I think I would prefer to see a guy like Fraley, if for nothing else, just because we haven't had that in so long. When was the last time we had a coach that came in here and said, I want to prioritize the offensive line?
I don't know if it's happened.
Long
It's
time. I mean, right. It's been so long.
before Pete Carroll, I would say.
And it has been
I
probably
mean,
what, a decade since we had an above average offensive line?
sure, sure. I will say you have to work hand in hand. Fraley wouldn't be enough. You have to work hand in hand with
Right.
John Schneider. Schneider
Right.
made the move back, what was it, 2015 maybe? The trade with the Saints. Was it who was it
Jimmy
Squeezy?
Graham. Yeah,
Yeah,
Max Unger for Jimmy Graham, and
Unger,
that was
yes. When that was kind of the start of what would be a decline in the Seattle Seahawks,
yeah.
not just the offense, but kind of the team in general. In my opinion, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. If you don't look, obviously the Super Bowl, but you kind of also look towards that turning point.
Yeah.
The Seahawks have an opportunity here to kind of right the wrong from 10 years ago and go into an offensive line move. And I made a whole video on why I would trust Mike McDonald. Why despite maybe Ryan Grubb not being justified this firing,
Hmm.
that I trust Mike McDonald enough where if he truly believes there's a better direction to go, then I'm going to ride with him for right now. I trust Mike McDonald has a plan. And in my opinion, his plan is way more up the alley of what they're doing over there in Detroit versus what the Buccaneers did a few years ago or what the Saints did this year.
Yeah. So here's the question though. So Schneider obviously he said in the past that he doesn't want to overdraft the lineman. He said he doesn't want to overpay linemen, and to his fault. I mean, personally, I think that he is being a little bit too conservative as far as how much he's
Agreed.
willing to pay for
Yeah.
linemen. Let's say we do bring in Hank Fraley, and Fraley says, "I want to draft this kid at 20," and Schneider is like, "No, that's too high to draft a guard or a tackle or whoever it is." Do you see that there could maybe be some potential for conflict there?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I don't think John Schneider's job is entirely secure if the
No, I
Seahawks
agree.
underperform once again. I think his biggest flaw has been his inability to build the trenches on both the
Yeah.
defensive line and the offensive line kind of consistently. Been very good at developing skill positions, been good at, those cornerback, wide receiver roles. But really, when you look at it, when was the last time Seattle had an elite edge rusher? When
Okay.
was the last time Seattle had an elite offensive line as a whole?
Well, and we have had good edge rushers, but most of the time it's from a trade. We haven't really drafted a great edge rusher since Frank Clark, and that was what, 9 years ago?
And we let him go to the Chiefs before he really reached his peak. So
Right.
you wonder, right? And I will say, to not just hate on John Schneider, you do see him start to invest with Cross on the offensive line, with Byron Murphy, last year on the defensive line, who, by the way, we haven't really talked about Byron Murphy, Levi, but that guy kind of underperformed as well. Obviously, it's a little hard to, an interior defensive lineman to judge exactly what his impact on a game is outside of just sacks and stuff like that. I will say he's starting to invest more into it, but is it a little too late? I don't know. I do think Hank Fraley would be a good option to kind of to start proving to Seattle, no, 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 we are here to run the ball. We're here to go with Mike McDonald's scheme. But Levi, the question I have to you, on paper it looks great, but Hank Fraley, I mean, he's never been an offensive coordinator. He's an offensive line, coach, which usually isn't the stepping stone to offensive coordinator,
Right.
or not always. How do you think he would do a personnel side? I think it'd be great, but scheming and drawing up plays, where do you think Hank Fraley would be able to do that?
Well, I think he would work as a leader, and I think you would have to hire a separate passing game coordinator to work alongside him.
Okay.
And teams do that. I mean, there's the Lions have Ben Johnson as the OC. They have a separate passing game coordinator, and I believe we have a passing game coordinator already. I'm not sure if he's coming back though because he was part of Ryan Grubb's staff. So But yeah, you would definitely need to have a passing game coordinator and probably also a running game coordinator who can kind of do more of the ins and outs of the scheming. I think Fraley would be more of a move as far as the culture building side of it and as far as the building the trenches side of it. Because I'm not sure what Fraley, but or who knows? Maybe Fraley is a mastermind scheming genius. I'm not sure, but like you're right. A lot of the time, you don't necessarily see an offensive line coach jump to being OC. It does happen occasionally, and sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So
Jake Peets is the guy. And actually, he still is right now the passing coordinator for Seattle,
okay,
which is interesting. He did not get the firing. He's listed, according to a couple of sources, has an outside chance of actually getting the move to being the offensive coordinator for Seattle, which would be interesting. Doubt that happens. Pretty sure they
yeah,
do go outside the organization. Um, but just something to keep an eye on for sure. Jake Peets, 14 years in the NFL. Yeah, definitely was helping out Grubb, but he would have a bigger role for sure if you hire a guy like Fraley compared to Grubb, who really his bread and butter was the passing game.
right.
So, how much did Peets really do? I'm not too sure. For sure, though, if you got a guy like Fraley, he would be involved. If you got a guy like Clint Kubiak, maybe not as much. So, really, it's all about balancing it. Either way, though, Levi. I mean, this is a consequential hire that will shape the future of Seattle Seahawks football for the next few years. And if you
Yeah,
want to go even more far down the line and talk about the domino effect, Levi, if you mess up this hiring, it could very easily, and this might be hyperbole, but it could very easily lead to a John Schneider firing and a Mike McDonald firing down the line. I think that's how critical this hiring really is.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would go that far, but yeah, you never
I
know
mean,
what could happen
who knows? Let's
if
say
you
they
if you.
mess this up. They ride him out for 2 years and no playoffs in 3 years for Mike McDonald. That could be the end. Who knows?
You're right. You're right. It could. Yeah, that's a good point because Mike McDonald, he's not the one responsible for the offense, but he is going to be responsible for making a good hire. And you're right. If we bring in somebody who underperforms again and the Seahawks miss the playoffs and things start to stall out, then yeah, that could totally be a situation where we see Mike McDonald go down with the ship. But
Especially
hopefully it doesn't happen.
especially when you consider the fact he was the one banging the drum for the firing of Ryan Grubb.
Right. Well,
So,
so we've heard, yeah.
and I mean, he didn't confirm it on 710, but all of the vibe and the wording made it seem
Yeah.
like it was because their ideologies did not interline. And that's
Yeah.
fine. And I like once again, I respect Mike McDonald for saying it's not going to work. It's not going to work. But
Right.
now it has to work because this was your decision to fire. I mean, Ryan Grubb was a John Schneider thing. This is going to be in large part Mike McDonald
Yeah.
in conjunction with Schneider.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so Levi, I guess last question: who would you prefer? I think you already said Fraley, but does any of this conversation change anything between Kubiak, Fraley, and the Buccaneers guy, Brian Leftwich?
Yeah, I think I'd prefer Fraley still.
Fraley, and then out of
Yeah.
Leftwich and maybe the more traditional route, you want Leftwich or Kubiak?
I would probably go with. I'd honestly probably maybe go with Leftwich.
Okay, I would go the same way. I
Yeah.
don't love what the Saints did down the stretch, so I agree.
Yeah.
I would go Fraley one, then you go Leftwich two, Kubiak three. Either way, though, definitely seems like some good candidates for the Seahawks, and we'll see very shortly, Levi, where they go, and we'll make a video for you guys. So make sure to turn on that bell down below and subscribe because that's really the best way if you want to see our content to get it out there. Yeah, Levi, anything else for us?
Well, guys, I think that's it for today. I hope everyone is enjoying playoff football, and hopefully the Seahawks will be there next year at this time. But as always, go Seahawks, and we'll see you guys next video.